Hi, friends, and welcome back. On today's episode, I'm going to be talking about a subject. The subject is soul age. And before I begin this particular topic, I'm going to ask for grace, for one. I'm also going to ask that you soften any rigid beliefs that you might have and try to look at this from a purely spiritual perspective because at first brush, it can almost come off as a little bit of arrogance, and that's definitely not my intent here. And I'm going to encourage everyone to kind of rise above the human inclination to start to categorize and assign value because that is not what I'm attempting to do here at all. But I wanted to come and talk about this particular subject of soul age because I talk to people, I see this a lot. We can look around the world and see that there are certain, I'm just going to call personalities. It's deeper than that, but I'm just going to call it personality so that you can have something to hold on to as I begin this topic. And we see that people are behaving in certain ways that are completely different than the way that we would behave. And there is a reason for all of that. There is a personality reason, which I just called it personality, but what I'm going to talk about today is much deeper than that. So, when I refer to personalities, if you all have listened to me before, then you know that I talk a lot about the Myers Briggs type indicator, and that is an extremely valuable tool. I'm certified in it. If you would like some assistance with that, please reach out to me and I can test you and offer you some guidance on that particular personality profile. And it's very accurate, and it will give you some insight into yourself and other people. But on a much, much deeper level, on a much, much broader, more spiritual level, we have something called soul age. And soul age is also determining how we show up in the world, what our worldview is, what particular bents that we have. And if you are a particular soul age and someone else is a different soul age, they can seem completely foreign to you. So I wanted to talk about that in hopes of giving people a little bit of an ability to relax as they're looking at things that are happening in the world, as they're looking at their relationships. When you understand this concept of soul age, it kind of makes things a little bit more palatable. You're able to kind of rest and relax. But again, I'm just going to keep adding this disclaimer. I'm probably going to pepper this throughout this podcast that we're not doing this from a standpoint of categorization because all ages are valid and we have all been at these soul ages at one time or another. Our journeys are not complete. So, let's begin. What do we mean when we're talking about soul age? So, your soul age means, well, let me back up a little bit and let me kind of give a little bit of lay a little bit of a groundwork here because if you don't believe in reincarnation and if you don't understand reincarnation, then none of this is going to make sense. So I'm going to ask that you stop this and then go back through some of my podcasts. I may not have titled one specifically reincarnation, but if you listen to enough of them, you're going to hear me talk about where we came from and how this larger construct works, how the spiritual realm works. Reincarnation is imperative. Your knowledge or acceptance of that is imperative to this particular talk. So if you're not there yet, that's okay. I have a lot of people around me that don't believe in reincarnation. But this is for those people that do believe in it. It does resonate with them on some level, and that's very important. So now that we've got that out the way, let's talk about soul age. So, with that backdrop of reincarnation, we have the soul age. And the soul age simply speaks to when you come into physical form, you have a certain number of lifetimes. And this is going to get really complicated. And I'm going to give a disclaimer that I don't know everything about soul ages. When it comes to spirituality, I don't know that we would ever know God in its fullest. I just think that He's way beyond anything that we can grasp in our human mind. But I have read enough about soul age, and I have communicated with my own inner being and higher mind about soul age enough to know that this is a very plausible explanation for how this works and how we come into these physical bodies and what we come into these physical bodies for. So, soul age just speaks to the number of incarnations that we are having. So, you start as a soul and then you decide to come into a physical body. You're going to choose the lessons that you are ready to learn. And depending upon your soul age, depending upon the number of lifetimes that you've lived, the number of times that you've reincarnated, you're going to choose different things. If you've had a lot of lifetimes, you're not going to need to start at the infant soul level. You're just at a different place. So that is this concept of soul age. It is speaking to the process of coming into physical bodies, and we come into these physical bodies to learn, because as we learn and as we grow, God's kingdom expands and grows. And let me flesh that out a little bit for a second. When you think back to caveman days, there was a caveman who was striking a rock on another rock and trying to make a fire so that he can cook his food. And now here we are with multiple ways to cook our food. We have ovens, we have microwaves, we have a gas stove, we have an electric stove. We have now convection stovetops that cook in a completely different way. We have air fryers. So, how do we get from a caveman trying to strike two rocks together to create a spark, to light a leaf, to make a fire, to now having all of these different modalities that we can cook in? That is God's kingdom advancing. And the way God's kingdom advances is through us. So as we have a desire, that caveman back in the day wanted an easier way to cook his food, an easier way to light a fire. So as he had that desire and came up with a creative way to solve that problem, God's kingdom expands. And so that is what all of this is about. It is for our growth as individuals. It is for us to become more like God, or if you're a Christian, more like Jesus. It is our responsibility as part of this larger creation, as part of this larger soul family, to do our part. And as we do our part, as we become our highest and best selves, then God's kingdom advances. As I become more of a spiritual teacher and my voice goes out to more people and they hear it and they say, oh, that really resonates with me. And then they become something else, and they go out and share with people what they learned from what I said, and then those people are then impacted and they grow. So as we're doing all of this, it doesn't matter if you're a spiritual teacher or an elementary school teacher or a banker or a laborer. It doesn't matter. We are all creating and adding to this particular construct that we're all in, and no part of it is more important than another part of it. We have to keep that in mind, because unfortunately the society that, and I'm going to say they created, you just kind of have to think about who they is. The society that they've created teaches us a hierarchy, and it teaches us to compare and contrast everything. But it's all valuable if you stop and think about it. How could I say that someone that's doing, I'm just going to say labor, why would what I do be any more important than that? And why would what they do be any more important than what I'm doing? It is all adding to this conglomeration of what God has called his creation, and it is all good. And so we have to hold on to that. Okay. So now let's talk about soul ages. So, the first level of incarnation we are going to call infant souls. And again, the reminder, and you're going to keep hearing me do this, probably to your annoyance, to try not to judge because of the terms that they are giving to these soul ages. I didn't come up with the terms. I've learned a lot from the Michael teachings. I've read other people that are talking about soul ages. They just categorize them as infant, baby, young, mature, and then old. Let me break down the infant souls. Infant souls are on their first incarnation. So, what they are primarily focused on is survival, right? So, they are really just learning how to be a human being. So, you're going to find infant souls incarnating. Now, remember, when you reincarnate, you choose certain things about your life. You choose what you're going to learn, what you're going to become in that lifetime. You do have some control over that as a soul. So a soul has to learn how to survive in the world. You don't necessarily come in your first lifetime as a soul being in a human body and then you're a CEO. It doesn't work like that. You have to learn the steps of survival and then you move to another level and then to another level. So you're going to find infant souls reincarnating into warmer climates because if you're focusing on survival primarily, it's easier to do that in a warmer climate. You can grow food much easier in a warmer climate than you can in a colder climate. And it's not that infant souls don't incarnate in cold climates. They will and they can. These are generalities, right? This is not a hard and fast rule. These are generalities. So this is generally speaking, you're going to find that infant souls incarnate into warmer climates. Because they incarnate into warmer climates, oftentimes they are going to be brown skinned people. Their skin has to be a certain color to tolerate the particular environment that they're in. And my heart breaks because people don't see the world in terms of souls, in terms of the larger aspect of what God has created. So there is this tendency to look down on people from places like Africa or Indonesia or Cambodia. We tend to look down on people of that nature. As I said, in our environment, quote, they have taught us to categorize and to make yourself better. But are we? Are we really better than the person that lives in a warmer climate where the food is not toxic and the water is not toxic? And they can sit and watch a sunrise in its glory and not have a care in the world, zero stress. They can reach up to a tree and pull down a mango and cut it open and drink the nectar. Their food is coming from soil that is replete with minerals, so their bodies are strong. They don't know anything about a prescription, they don't know anything about a doctor. They don't know the stress of having to perform on your job. They don't know the stress of having to come back from vacation and you have 200 emails and a presentation due. They don't know any of that. They don't know divorces. They don't know lawyers. They don't know any of that. And so our tendency would be to look down on people that incarnate as infant souls and say that they are less than or that we are better. But like I say, ask yourself the question, are we really better? They are still connected to the Creator. They're the ones, Native American, for example, that can sit at night and just stare at the stars and communicate directly with God because they don't have a laptop and they don't have a daycare. They don't have all of those kinds of stressors interfering with their connection. They just came here. So they still have that connection. They still have the simplicity of understanding how to connect, right? We're so busy. I'm always trying to find time to meditate. Their lives are not complicated. So they can sit and they can contemplate life and they can connect much, much better than we can as we get busier. So, every stage kind of has their pros and cons, but that freedom that they have time to get to know themselves. They have time to get to know their creator. The simplicity of life that they have is just to be revered and to be appreciated. Freedom. That is what they know. And so, in their first incarnation, that is what they're here to explore. Who am I? And who is God? And what is this? And they had the time and the space to do that. I saw a video a couple of weeks ago of a girl. She looks like she may have been Thai or Cambodian. And man, she had this relationship with this elephant. When this elephant saw her, her face lit up. You can tell the elephant's face lit up. And she had this sliced mango on a silver tray that she was feeding him. And the silver tray told me that she revered that process, that she has such respect and reverence for being able to feed that elephant. And he delighted in that mango, and he took his trunk and he kissed her on her face and he nibbled on her ears. It was the most beautiful exchange. Now you have people that are no longer in the infant soul stage that would look down on that and call that unsophisticated. And I would say, really? Man, what I would give to be able to have the time and the freedom to be able to interact with nature and with God's animals that way. So that's just my reminder to not categorize and not assign value to these levels, because that is not what this is about. So that's infant souls. And I'm going to go ahead and give this particular example. It is the best one that I can think of off the top of my head. I'm in no way saying that it is acceptable. But when I think about slavery, when I think about the souls, the infant souls that incarnated into Africa, and then you had other souls that went to Africa and grabbed them and brought them to America, and they built this country. So we can't deny that. We can say that slavery was an atrocity, and there's much karma incurred for that. There's karma for us as a nation to have done that to other human beings that will have to be answered for. Now, what that looks like, I can't really say, but one of the laws of the universe is sowing and reaping, and it was wrong to do other human beings like that. But here's the flip side of that. Because they had incarnated as infant souls, they were able to be captured and brought here, and they built this nation. So we have to have reverence and respect for those infant souls that agreed to incarnate at that level, because now we have the United States. They were brought here. The crops, all of those things that the slaves did, working in the field, it was the thing that built up the United States. So for all we know, had that not happened, we don't know what the United States would look like. And so we have to have reverence for that. We have a tendency in our society to look down on people of color. We have a tendency to want to diminish slavery or say it wasn't that bad, or no, all those things were true. It was an atrocity. But at the same time, the value that came out of that is the life that we are living today. And so we can thank those infant souls for that. It has nothing to do with color. People want to categorize and assign value, and I'm better than you because I'm a different race and I'm a different color. It has nothing to do with that. We are talking about souls choosing to incarnate, and they are choosing a particular race, a particular area to incarnate into, right? So they're brown because they live in warmer climates, and they live in warmer climates because it is easy to focus on survival, and that is what infant souls are coming here for. They don't have to worry about housing and heat. They can grow food with a seed and the dirt and a little bit of water, and they can feed themselves. They can feed their whole village. They can feed their children. So their skin has to be darker to tolerate the sun. So when you step back and look at it from that perspective, everything shifts. It's not about race. It's not about anybody being inferior. It is about what the souls are choosing. Okay. Let's move on to baby souls. And baby souls are the calling card for baby souls. I'm just going to rattle off some things, and you may have people around you and you'll be able to recognize this. Baby souls are very much interested in politics, very much interested in religion. They're very family oriented. They are your rule makers and your rule followers. So you will find baby souls often as police officers, often in the military, your MAGA movement. Those are baby souls. Um, Oftentimes your religious especially religious zealots are your baby souls, the ones that kind of your fundamentalist, the ones that kind of feel like is my way or the highway, like is my religion and no other religion is valid. That is the calling card of a baby soul, and they can be somewhat resistant to change, to anything that is different, right? If they are Christian, they are resistant to the Muslim. If they are this race, they are resistant to anybody else of another race. If they are this particular gender, they oftentimes will discriminate against other genders. That is just how baby souls show up. So they are kind of at the stage of exploring their individuality, right? You have infant souls at the level of survival, and now you got baby souls that are really at that beginning stage of individuation. And so they look at things and they are quick to call them other, and they are quick to draw a line at other. If you don't worship the way that I worship, you're wrong. If you don't do things the way that I do them, you're wrong. So those are some of the darker aspects of baby souls. But on the flip side, they have built our institutions, our legal system, the penal system, the courts, the police system, the church. I mean, they have built some beautiful things, universities. Those steadfast institutions were built by the baby souls. So I hope you're starting to see that every stage, every soul age has value. We need them all to complete this whole of humanity. Next, we're going to move on to the young souls. These are your Instagram people. These are the people that care about how they look. They will be quick to get plastic surgery. They're at the gym. They like the focus being on themselves. They believe in mastery of themselves, and they love making money. So this would be your Hollywood types, like I say, your Instagram types. Um, what they bring to society is a certain level of mastery. Like I said, they love making money, like wealth and flashy homes and flashy cars. That is kind of their calling card. So if infant souls are at survival and baby souls are at individuation or individuality, I'm going to say the young souls are probably kind of at mastery. And like I said, just I don't want to throw out any names here, but some people are coming to mind that kind of just really typify the young souls. But the young souls are your movers and your shakers. The United States has the personality of a young soul, in that everything here is about getting money and how you look, to the exclusion of most other things in this nation. They're going to value you if you are beautiful and if you are rich. And so that is coming from the souls that incarnate at the level of young soul. And so there's value for that. Like, um, we all need to get in shape. We all need to exercise. And the pursuit of the American dream is very much a young soul ideation. And so it's just that pursuit of excellence, of finding out what you're made of, how far can you go, and how beautiful can you be in the process of it. So those are your young souls. Here's why all of this matters, because when you're looking at the world, you may find yourself in a situation where, let's say you're a mom and you have a young soul, and you're like, well, every time I turn around, she's in the mirror, she's looking at her clothes. Now, teenagers are going to do that to a certain extent, but when someone has incarnated, when a soul has incarnated as a young soul, you're going to be able to see that in a very big way. Like, it's going to be a really big deal to that teenager how they look, a really big deal to that young soul what neighborhood they live in, what kind of car they drive. And so if you're not a young soul, then you're looking at that person and you're thinking, what is going on? Like, I just don't get it. And so that's why I think understanding the soul ages is of value. Like I said, we don't want to look down on anybody. We don't want to call it this or that, because everything is adding value. So let's move on to the mature soul. And the mature soul, which is where I'm at, so I'm probably a little biased here, but the mature souls are in the exploration phase of themselves and others. So you're going to find mature souls trying to really figure out who they are, examining their relationships. When you're scrolling through your social media feeds, social media is probably, that's very much a young soul thing as well. I just thought about that. But when you're scrolling through your social media feed and you see the post about healing your trauma, those are all mature souls. Those are going to be your psychologists, your life coaches. Those are the souls that have incarnated to examine the self and to examine their relationship to other people. So I'm going to say that if infant souls are focusing on survival and baby souls are focusing on individuality and individuation, and young souls are focusing on mastery, I'm going to say that mature souls are focusing on service. They just kind of live in that way. And I'm very much like that. Just, who can I help today? What are you struggling with? They are very much trying to figure out life and examine life so that they can use that wisdom to free other people, in a sense, to help them grow, to help them discover, to help them become their highest and best, their fullest selves. So, of course, we need those people in this lifetime. We need people reminding us to heal our trauma, and we need people to help us when we have fallen into dysfunctional patterns, addictions, or bad relationships, whatever the case may be. We need people that can understand that and that can come with a level of wisdom that can, in a sense, free us when we're bound and when we've lost our way. And so that is the mature soul. You're going to find them, like I said, psychologists, life coaches. You will also find them in levels of activism. Again, it is that service. It is that now that I know myself, now I'm going to explore the understanding of other people and that wanting other people to be free. So, activism looks like I'm going to serve you by stopping the things that are causing you pain or stopping the things that are harming humanity. So it is that focus on others that is self and others. That is the calling card of the mature soul, that I'm just going to go ahead and categorize that as service. So when you have a baby soul in a room and you have a mature soul in a room, it gets very, very difficult for them to try to understand each other if you're not familiar with this concept of soul age. But now that you are familiar with it, when you are a baby soul talking to a mature soul, and I kind of caught myself a little bit because I'm not saying that baby souls won't listen to a mature soul on a podcast, but it's probably not going to be in record numbers. But like I said, we're speaking in generalities, right? There are some baby souls that are highly evolved, that are definitely on the path of evolution, that are moving to the next stage or phase of incarnation. And that's a good point. So let me interject that here because this is my personal belief. My personal belief is that it is possible for a soul to go from one level to the next level in the same lifetime. So I will give the example of, there's a TV judge, I think it was Judge Joe, and at one time I think he went to prison and then he cleaned his life up. He went to law school, he became a judge, and now he is offering wisdom and advice to others that have gotten themselves into trouble. So, like I said, just be mindful. These are general categories and general terms. It is possible to go from one phase to another in a lifetime. If you can hit one or two, then you are blessed. But you could be looking at a baby soul that's transitioning to a young soul, or a young soul that's transitioning to a mature soul. So, I personally believe that that is possible in this lifetime. I think about people like, I'm just going to go ahead and say Rogan, some of those other people like that. They are very steeped in like politics, or they value family. Like you can tell when you're talking to one of these are like your meat and potatoes people. But here he is, open minded, having people on his podcast that are teaching enlightenment subjects. So God is very complex. I'll just interject that right there. These are patterns, but this is not the mold for human beings. We are all far too complex to just fit in a particular category. But I wanted to offer this so it would help. Because if you are a mature soul and you're looking at a baby soul, you can't process that. Or if you are a baby soul and you're looking at an infant soul, you can't process that. And I see that a lot. I see people who are saying terrible things about the immigrants, and why can't they do this, that, and the other, and they don't belong here. The spiritual eye tells us this: they are incarnating as infant souls. And when you are an infant soul, you are focused on survival. And when you feel threatened, you are going to lash out. You are going to strike out. Sometimes it could be with violence. And so, having that understanding can soften the discriminatory view towards those people, but it can also help the leaders integrate them into society. They're at a stage that requires something different, and you're treating them like they are not at that stage, that they are at other stages. And so, if they knew that, there would be some level of integration. There would be some process through which they were given the tools to succeed in the environment that they now find themselves in. So I think the leaders' hearts were in the right place, but I think they just didn't understand. So soul age helps us to understand it is not about race. It is not a situation where this particular group or this particular race of people is unsophisticated or violent or you can't live with them. Throw all of that garbage out. These are souls coming here. These are souls that are choosing that life for a particular reason. And you have to be able to see it with the spiritual eye to understand that. Some of them choose the role simply so that we can see them and know what compassion is and find our way to unconditional love and compassion towards something that is other. So they're choosing to be teachers, even as an infant soul. So, like I said, don't knock it. you know, don't knock the incarnation, don't knock the stage, because one, God is much bigger than any of us know. And two, these things are far more complex than what we think. That's why the Bible tells us, judge not lest you be judged, because most people, they don't have the whole picture when they're making comments or being awful towards other people. When you have a spiritual perspective on life, everything changes. All right. So, lastly, we're going to get to the old soul. So, when I think of an old soul, I think of like your Dalai Lamas, um, people like that. They have a very philosophical view of life. Um, they are in the last stages of their incarnation. Now, that last stage could be many incarnations, but technically they're in the last stage of incarnation, and they're going to transition back to be helpers on the other side, or possibly even reunite with the Father. But how they show up is very easygoing, very laid back. They are, as I said, philosophical, very wise. They are very content to accept life as it is. And so there's beauty and value to that, of course. They are the ones that can look at the dark and look at the light and say, all of it is God. And so they may see a soul that is struggling, whereas a mature soul, which is what I am, is going to try to run in with the white cape and save and offer all this wisdom and all these tools and try to get them to these people just to end their suffering. We're going to try to serve them in that way. The old soul doesn't do that. The old soul can look at everything and say, all is God. And so their perspective would be, oh, look at that soul. And look at what they're choosing to learn. They're not going to run in and try to save. They may offer some wisdom because they are full of wisdom. And so they will offer that, but they respect free will. It is that person's choice to choose. And if they don't choose it, an old soul is okay with that. They're going to say, oh, well, look at him over there. Look at him in that struggle and look at what he's going to learn. When he comes out on the other side of that, man, he's going to be amazing. They feel nothing towards the drama. They're okay with everything. They see God in its totality, and they understand that it is light and it is dark and it is up and it is down. And it is a beautiful way to look at life. So they don't get rattled and ruffled about anything. They hold the light for us on this planet. They offer us wisdom. They offer us perspective on life, but that's the extent of it. You're going to find them in the hills of Tibet meditating. You're going to find them in monasteries, oftentimes secluded away from people. If they aren't secluded away from people, because you don't have to be a Dalai Lama to be an old soul, you can just be in a suburb, in a community. But you're typically going to be possibly creative. Pursuits would appeal to an old soul, hobbies. They're just going to surround themselves with their books. They don't really care that much about the outside world. They're tired. They're ready to wrap it up. If you come to them and sit on a bench and you say you're having a problem, they get all kinds of information that will help you. And then they're just going to go on their happy way and shut their door. They don't care about material wealth. They don't care about fame and fortune. They don't care about forcing people to do what they want to do. They're done with all of that. And it is such a beautiful place to be. Like I say, I envy that because I'm always, of course, I'm on this podcast trying to give people something that will improve their lives. Like, oh, let me tell them this. Let me tell them about the soul ages. Let me to possibly prevent them from fighting with their spouses or fighting with their children or fighting with their mom or their people at work. Just being able to say, oh, that person is probably at this stage, and I'm just going to take a deep breath and let them do that. Like when I'm trying to tell them about how they can improve their life and they really don't want to improve their life, they just want to party, they just want to be on Instagram, and they just want to show off their abs and get their Botox and lip fillers. Oh, okay. That person has incarnated as a young soul, and I can respect that. So I want you all to have that. That's why I'm here, to give you tools so that you can live your life better. Stop your pain, stop your suffering. And an old soul says, nah, suffering brings growth. And they're okay. So, those are the soul ages. And I'm going to put the disclaimer back in here that you not leave this podcast with any level of judgment, any level of calling one stage better than another, because each stage has its positives and each stage has its not so positives. But they all contribute to this grand dance that we're doing called humanity, God's creation. We are souls that have chosen to incarnate into these physical bodies. And we are choosing the role that we are playing so that our soul can expand and grow. It is almost like when you are a young adult and you decide to go to college, if you do decide to go to college, and you're going to pick your major. You're going to pick what you're going to learn. Some people are going to learn about finance. Some people are going to learn about psychology. Some people are going to pursue art. Some people are going to pursue mathematics. So, as a soul, you are choosing the role that you're going to play, but you know full well that no matter your soul age, you are a very valuable part of the human fabric and that you are participating fully in the drama. Sorry about that. Phone rang. And so, just remember, don't look down on it. Appreciate all of it. Grow where you need to grow. Appreciate others for where they are and respect that. And just know that all of it is making sense. Even if it doesn't appear that way, it's all making sense. It's all clicking into place. It is all a part of this larger story that we are all a part of, and it is amazing. So I hope that helps. If you have questions for me, please reach out. This was a complicated subject, and I'm sure some people are going to walk away and they're going to say, oh, I'm not this level, I'm not that level. And that is the nature of life. That is the nature of us as human beings. And I just encourage you not to do that again. Just see God in its entirety. He is beautiful. He is magnificent. And we are all a part of that. So, all right, gang, thanks for hanging out with me. I will talk to you soon.